oftentimes actually it's because, oh, this is getting deep, but oftentimes when we think economically, yes, we have a lot of buying power, but actually the economic power to be able to create products and put products out there which solve our problems is not in our hands. Whilst we are the buyers, we may not be the majority of investors, right? And so we actually need there to be buy-in or support and equity from people who may not look like us, but understand that there is something not to be exploited, but to be served.
I'm Max from Black Income Creators. Welcome to the podcast. I think I'll let you introduce yourself because I know author, podcaster, etc. There's a lot that you do, so I think it's best if you introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on. It's actually great to be here talking with you. Hello, everybody. My name is Courtney Daniella Boateng. I am, as Max has alluded to, a multi-hyphenate. I do many things. The best of which is being the co-founder of To My Sisters, which is a digital sisterhood community which is driving change for women by women in the world. We do a lot of work around gender equity through content creation and community building. And so through To My Sisters, I am an author, I am a podcaster, I am a conversationalist. I get to have really cool conversations between women, facilitating conversations for women. And I am also a YouTuber. I have been for about 8 years. This is what I do full time. I also am a advisor and consultant on digital growth strategy, especially around women's impact and impact on women's communities. So I do a lot of things. I am an award-winning entrepreneur. I have multiple ventures and have done for the last couple of years. So I really just love using my skills, my talents to improve women's well-being, their wellness, growth and development.
It's really interesting that you're one of the few you're one of the few content creators who actually is an entrepreneur, because a lot of what I'm seeing now with content creation is that people are advising on how to be an entrepreneur, etc., but there isn't an actual entrepreneurial bit. They're only selling advice, if that makes sense. So they're not actually selling the doing, the service, the product bit. So do you want to take us back to the beginning? So you said, 8 years you've been on YouTube, but take us back to the beginning in terms of your journey, your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. So I have always been a lover of YouTube, a lover of content. Like, I watch content obsessively. It's what taught me to do my makeup, do my hair.
Looking very good. Yes, I get it.
On the internet. And yeah, I literally taught myself how to do hair using YouTube, and I went on to be a hairdresser. So I had hair clients, I worked in salons, and I had this side of me which I really, really loved, which was my creativity, my love for beauty. But I was also really good at academics. I've always been the girl who can really do everything and excel. And so I got into the University of Cambridge whilst doing my A-levels and ended up in, but also I was doing hair on the side. And growing a hair business. I then evolved it into a wig business. I worked in business development for an e-commerce wig company. And my love for hair and beauty was just always manifested through that, going down the business development and entrepreneurial route. And I decided in my first year of university to also start a YouTube channel, sharing my love for beauty, but also talking about my experience at Cambridge and being a young Black girl at Cambridge, and kind of using the internet to drive a conversation around access and diversity, but also speak directly to aspiring, Cambridge students who wanted to know if there were people like them there. Like, I wish I had gone online and seen a video from a Black girl with a full face of makeup and a laid wig, like I'm in Cambridge, And so I was just like, I can be the representation I want to see. So put that video out there. It really did some great numbers, ended up, being on the news and featured in articles that were driving conversation about diversity and access at traditionally white institutions like Cambridge and Oxford. And I loved that a YouTube video could drive such discourse and conversation. So this is so cool. The internet can be used for so many things, like to just drive conversation about the things people don't want to talk about. And after graduating in 2018, I was kind of like, I don't really see where my YouTube journey is going to go. I know I love the internet, but I really love hair and business. And so I started my first hair company. And that's kind of where I leapt more into entrepreneurship. So I know how to be an entrepreneur without being a content creator or just using content as a marketing tool for business, especially product-based businesses. And so
No.
I did that for 3 years, grew my hair company to like 6 figures, was featured in Forbes as like a top Black entrepreneur to follow. And this was during the pandemic when my company really started growing because it was an e-commerce company. It was called CDB London, and it was just easy hair solutions for women all over the world. And I got burnt out because I was like, just 20, how old was I during the pandemic? 23 or something, like 23-year-old girl, never really had this much money before, never really had this much responsibility before, don't really know what I'm doing. Yes, I've always been a high achiever, but this is a new world. And then it's a global pandemic. Like I'm just,
Yeah.
girl. And so it was really tough. I ended up burning out and just deciding that I wanted to put my company on pause and really like just stop and just do me for a little while. And then I fell in love with content again and sharing that journey of like, okay, I really want to work on my personal development. I want to become a better entrepreneur. I need to take care of myself as well because I'm like recovering from burnout. Let me share that journey with people. So I decided to go on an unofficial gap year and I traveled and I vlogged that and shared that, had conversations about soft life and rest and work-life balance. And I really found myself falling in love with YouTube again. But thankfully, before I had kind of paused my hair company, I had started a podcast with my best friend called To My Sisters. And that journey just birthed something completely new in terms of finding a community of like-minded women. And it really made me think there is something here that merges content creation and entrepreneurship. I know how to bring people through content to a company or to a product. Let me bring people through content to a community. And
Yeah.
that's what TMS basically was, kind of merging entrepreneurship with content creation, because at the end of the day, content creators are entrepreneurs, right? They may lean more into one facet of it, which is maybe the creative direction, the marketing. But if you are a one-man team and you're being able to generate revenue and give clients or customers a product, which is the content, you're an entrepreneur, or a solopreneur. You may not
Yeah.
sound like that, but you are a business person.
And where did you meet your bestie?
At school, secondary school, we've known each other for over 15 years.
Oh wow! So like with first year secondary school.
Yeah.
Oh, okay then. And I'm not aware of her journey. So is it similar or is it
Very,
completely different? Oh,
very.
really?
Her background isn't in like content creation per se. It is in content creation, but not YouTube. She is a writer, amazing writer. And so
Okay.
like mailing lists, LinkedIn, definitely check her out, Renee Kapuku.
Right.
She's absolutely amazing. And I was more on like the visuals, like we even just bonded. I love film, I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
She's more so story and the writing. And yes, similarly, very strong academic background, and both of us were living very similar experiences. She went to Oxford, I went to Cambridge, very similar experiences, and just being like, yo, that's what kept our friendship so strong, those relatable experiences and feelings. And we decided to kind of bring our heads together because her background work-wise is in research and working in like education technology. And my background was, like I said, in business development and very much creative direction. And bringing that together is what's allowed TMS to really grow. Like I always say, like I have that kind of like creative business mind, and she has the operational business mind. And I think those two together just birth such magic.
It makes sense. It is a marriage. It's a good
Yeah,
marriage because you complement rather than sort of
complementary.
compete, which is really important. So can I just ask why just the sisters? Because, you know, as a Black female entrepreneur myself, I've struggled with that, especially when looking at communities. I run London
Yeah.
Black Professionals. It's mixed. But the experience I have is very different with male members of the group and female members of the group. So
Yeah.
was there reasoning behind why you decided just to focus on Black women?
Yeah, so To My Sisters isn't exclusively just for Black women. However, we are big about telling stories and about vulnerability and transparency. And when people see two Black women who are talking on a podcast about friendship, about sisterhood, of course, are living at the intersection of Blackness, womanhood, all of our identity, means that that's the story we'll tell, and we'll never erase that from the conversation. So for us, like, we talk very proudly about the fact that we are two children from a West African home. We, contend with so many different cultural challenges, as well as beautiful parts of our culture as well, and we're bringing that all to the podcast with the hopes that women can listen and may not be able to relate to all of it, but be able to respect it and glean wisdom from it. But we have found that, of course, we've built this global community of sisters who have such varying backgrounds, but also a lot of who look like us and can relate to our stories. And we love it so much because the support that we've received from our sisters has been crazy. And so, yeah, we always say, like, To My Sisters, it's not a space exclusively for Black women, but we're going to make sure it's a space where Black women are respected and given the mic. Because like you described, a lot of Black women go into other environments, even if they are for women, and are not included. And because we're at the spearhead of this, we're going to make sure Black women are included. We're going to make sure that Black women are taken care of. But this is a community for all stories to actually be appreciated, because we understand that when it comes to sisterhood, a lot of it is done in isolation. But especially when we are talking about the big S sisterhood, as in the political weapon that is, and I mean weapon in a good way, the political tool that is sisterhood, we need it to be about understanding and listening to each other's stories, no matter what your background is. Because at the end of the day, with TMS, if we say that this is about sisterhood and the wellness, growth, and development of women around the world, we are going to need women around the stories of women around the world to be represented, which can't even be fully encompassed in just me and Renee's experiences. And so we do want TMS to be a place where women can hear each other's stories, respect each other, listen to each other, maybe not always even agree all the time, but be able to have a space where we can talk so vulnerably about our experiences and be heard by other women, so that we can change the world, even in small ways, through our friendships with one another and through our respect, our mutual respect.
Yeah. I think what people forget also is like the buying power, the spend power of, women and women of color.
Yeah.
It's amazing, especially in the area that you were in sort of like that hair beauty.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
massive.
Yeah.
You look at Rihanna, etc. You look at that and you think, that should have been 20, 30 years ago. Why is it taken so long?
So long, exactly. And oftentimes, actually, it's because, this is getting deep, buy-in or support and equity from people who may not look like us, but understand that there is something not to be exploited, but to be served. And I think that's where sisterhood comes in on an economic level, which is, okay, I might not personally have this experience, but I recognize that there is another woman going through this experience. And if I have the privilege, literally the political privilege, to be like, let me give money to this, like economic empowerment, or let me give spotlights to this, or some kind of empowerment to this movement or to this voice, then let me do that to support that movement and that advancement. And what we're looking for really is gender equity when it comes to TMS. We're looking to, allow every woman, even in underprivileged places, to receive gender equity. And sometimes that looks like white women hearing our struggle, white men hearing our struggle. That looks like Black men hearing our struggle. That looks like people in the West hearing the struggle of those who may be in the global South, all of that stuff, or who may be the global majority. We need people to hear each other's stories, and then we rely heavily on human compassion and empathy so that we can help solve these problems together as well.
You said that you put your business on pause to focus on the content creation. Is it something that you think you'd go back to, or do you think it's...
Absolutely. No, I do think there's still a lot I want to do in the hair and beauty space, because I see how much hair, beauty, even salon spaces as a third space is related to sisterhood and community, especially for Black women. It's a huge safe space for us. It's a huge place where we bond. It's a huge place where we feel seen and feel comfortable to even talk about some of the things we talk about on the podcast, like relationships and money and fear and health and our well-being and the changes we go through as women. I feel like the salon's the only place you can find a 20-something-year-old girl on her first date getting her hair done next to a 60-year-old woman who's been divorced 12 times, you know? It's like those even intergenerational conversations happen in the salon chair. And that's the one thing I loved about my journey, which is, yes, I went from doing hair to now really being in media. But at the end of the day, the conversations didn't actually change. The conversations that I had with women when they were sitting in my salon chair are the exact same conversations that I have now on the podcast, you know, conversations about breakups and heartbreak and parental trauma and I don't like my body and I need to go to the gym or I need to make more money. I need to buy a house. How do I do it? These are all conversations I was having in my salon chair that I just get to have on a mic. So I definitely can't wait to merge the two, hopefully very soon.
Interesting. I think for me, I've said in the past, like the relationship of finding a black hairdresser that you can stay with in London, particularly because London is quite, diverse, is harder than finding a partner at times because it is hard to find one that you connect with to that point that you stick with them for like 12 years or something. It's not an easy journey. And there's so many transient hairdressers that come in, especially from like, the Caribbean and West Africa, come in and then 6 months, a year, they've gone.
Yeah.
So I think that's also just sort of one of the difficulties I found with the hair and beauty, and also recommendations. There's very few places to go. So, for example, I have alopecia. So where do I go for that kind of information that is specific to Black women, not alopecia for Caucasian hair? It's very different to
Absolutely.
So there's something, isn't there, about sort of having those resources and having that community.
100, and it's so like you said, it's about Black women in particular feeling served and feeling seen, and that's something that I try to do with my content all the time. I want women, especially women who look like me, women who like I am a very tall, dark-skinned, plus-size woman. Like I feel like for me personally, there hasn't been a lot of representation of myself even growing up. And so one thing I did vow when I started my content creation journey, as well as when I started entrepreneurship, was I want women like me to be seen. And it's not to say I'm even at the bottom of the social hierarchy. There are actually a lot of people who again are completely marginalized and silenced and aren't recognized. So I really do think we need to have that kind of compassionate approach to content, which is humanizing everything, putting humans and the human experience and the human feeling at the center of it, not just as the creator, but as the viewer, like the people who you are actually serving, how do they feel? And I think within the beauty space, as well as in the content space, a lot of women don't feel seen, they don't feel served, and they don't feel heard. And so creating spaces, whether it's a beauty space or an online space or a community that allows women to feel seen, heard, and served is important.
Mm. And in terms of those spaces, like you said, things like finance comes up quite a bit and dating comes up quite a bit, and health. Those are sort of the three areas that I think come up a lot when I'm talking to Black women that they're really concerned about. On the finance bit, interestingly enough, I think Black women typically, on average, seem to be doing better than their male counterparts at certain ages. Yeah. And therefore it creates a dynamic, that toxic masculinity doesn't like very much. Are you hearing the same narrative?
Yes, we are.
Because I'm a good 20 years, your senior. So I'm trying to work out. It's like, women in their 40s, we feel like this is, we're experiencing this, but it seems to be across the board.
It's across the board. At the end of the day, I think we're living in a society, and I think with societal norms and the culture that's being born now is now that women are to some degree being more educated, getting more jobs, higher paying jobs at that, there is a huge challenge to the status quo which has already existed, which is men being the provider. And now we have to call into question, what is masculinity? What does it mean to be a leader? All of these things, how does that affect your relationship dynamic and the dynamic in your home? And I think the one thing we always emphasize is we're living in new times. Like the last 50 years has been revolutionary to any other time that there was. And so now I think it's a charge for women to really ask themselves a very big question, which is, what do you want? And I think we've been told, oh, you need to want it all. You need to have it all. You need your life to look like this. You need your life. It's not about letting people dictate to you what your life and what your home and what your relationship should look like, whether that be a man, whether that be a woman, whether that be the internet, whether that be your family. No one should dictate to you what it is you should want. But once you ask yourself, what do I want? And investigate what your motivations are behind what you decide that you want, and you decide to commit to that decision. Actually, I want my relationship to look like this. I want a man who makes this much, or I want a man who will do this for me, and I want to be able to do this for my household. Once you've made that decision and you've made that goal, go after it. As traditional as it may be, as new as it may be, go after it, and don't let anyone bully you out of it.
I think that's the hardest thing for people to do, because if you've spent 10, 20, 30 years being told this is what you can have, not even what you want, but this is what you can have, and then to sort of reset, that takes a certain type of process that I think very few people are willing to commit to. Right. It's like, when they say do the work, that's what they mean. It's like you really got,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's easier to do it almost in a sort of financial way, to say like, okay, I want my business to look like that, and it's a separate entity to you.
But now you're dealing with people.
Yeah, when you're saying, what do I want? Do I want kids? Do I want this? Do I want? It's a very difficult conversation to have with yourself.
Absolutely. Sorry, you go on.
No, I was going to say, and with African families, it's like if you turn around and be like, nah, I just want to travel the world.
yeah, and I think that's oftentimes the cornerstone of a lot of the conversations we have on the podcast, which is, like you're saying, doing this work of unlearning, being interrogative of some of the feelings that we have and where did they come from? Where did that idea come from? Like, who told us these things? And that's not just around the traditional stuff, because I think a lot of people think, oh, unlearning, and they think of all the things that were handed down century to century, the traditional patriarchal things. But sometimes, and a lot of what we're seeing on our podcast recently, is actually confronting the new or somewhat new ideologies that come, which can be just as threatening. Like, oh, I don't know, women shouldn't participate in relationships with men at all. And it's like, I don't think we should go to the other end of the extreme like that. I think the opposite end of women should just exist for men is also just as dangerous. But I think we're in a generation right now where we need to learn to be nuanced. It's not even just about balance, it's about nuance, and it really is about wisdom. And I think wisdom is found in the crux of conversations, which people don't want to go into. They don't want to address what's at the bottom of this. What is that feeling? How do we recover this? What is beneficial? What is unbeneficial? But I think at a deep root of it, women are still not being allowed individualism. As much as, yes, we have rights and we have, oh, you can go to work, and of course women's rights and women are being empowered, there is still a desire from society and the forces that be, which want us to conform. They want us to be a specific type of woman. They want us to fit into a caricature. And oftentimes people in romantic relationships are trying to find a person who will fit into their caricature. And as soon as they show any kind of uniqueness or individualism or some kind of dynamic nature, people get frustrated, right? And then you see people leaving and ending relationships because they don't want to deal with the drama, or this person is no longer convenient. And people do it in friendships as well. And it's like, no one's a cookie cutter, and so many pieces of content and so many products are trying to make us fit that mold that none of us actually fit. And so we should actually start embracing our own uniqueness, but also allowing other people to be unique, and then taking a step back and be like, I see you for who you are. Do I actually like you? Do I actually want to do life with you? And if I do, then let's do this journey together. Not that it will be perfect, because again, we're not the same person, but I think you're worth doing life with because I genuinely enjoy you as an individual. I think we've lost that essence of just acceptance and true respect for each person's individualism.
Yeah, I think we've gone into a sort of instant gratification, and because of the dating apps, and I do blame the dating apps, they're sort of like, well, are they this height? Are they this weight? Do they earn this much money, etc.? And you can sort of filter through, and you've decided that these are the things that are really important. Whereas before, you would meet people in a very different way, and you'd connect with them before you would actually make a
Yeah.
decision as to whether you wanted to do life with them. You're kind of almost doing everything backwards uh,
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for women, especially in terms of making money, there is a bit of a fear there about being too successful
Big
almost,
time.
because then it's like, oh, then it sort of pushes me outside of any market because
Yeah.
guys are going to think, oh no, she's out of my
Yeah.
financial reach or
Yeah.
whatever. But if someone is looking to sort of get into that space of I don't know, content creation to help support their business or to support their income, what would you sort of advise? How would you suggest they started that?
Oh, firstly, do it. Like, don't overthink it. Just get your phone
Good.
out and just record something to a trending sound or just your thoughts or showing how to use your product or whatever. I think get used to being in front of the camera or find a way to be behind the camera and comfortable, but still have a creative outlet. I think a lot of people see content creation as a marketing tool, but they haven't fell in love with actually creating. If that's the case, then outsource. If it's not, you better fall in love with it. So I would definitely say like get started and find a form of creation that works for you. Um, I think don't be intimidated by the vastness of the internet. Some people have been doing this for decades, they've mastered it, they're great at it, and some people have just started yesterday. That could be you. And so allow yourself to experiment and realize that the internet, as much as yes, everything lasts forever, the internet can be obsessed about one thing today and over it tomorrow. And as much as that can be disheartening, that actually means that there's never really a need to be embarrassed because people will forget. You can delete something, you can archive something, and you've experimented, you've tried. I think we shouldn't be afraid to be seen trying. And so if you're new to content, try with freedom and experiment till you find your thing. And I think the last thing I was saying, the biggest thing is build a community. I think everyone is very obsessed with getting the most amount of followers, getting the highest amount of engagement, but they're forgetting that the people on the other side of the screen are human. They want to connect with you on a human level. And what connects people together and makes them a community is a common story or a shared identity or shared values. And so don't be afraid to really establish those things. You don't need to be for everyone. I hope that you will come on the internet and be, respectful and a safe place and just decent as a human. But it's okay to be for who you are for. It's okay to find your tribe, as they say, and kind of just serve them and go in with the intention of building a community of people who can come around your content and feel like they have found their people and they have found something that speaks to them. So build a community and not just a following.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like you say, they might jump on trends, but they're also maybe they don't know how much of themselves to put into the content. So either they put in way too much and you're like, yeah, I don't really need to know what you had for breakfast, and it's got nothing to do with your product, it's got nothing to, you're not selling health. So, or they sort of like only ever give content around their business. And so you just think, well, I still don't know who this person is. And you don't connect,
Yeah,
you literally would not connect. So if you're, hairstyling thing is not about you, it's just about, okay, there's a wig here, you can buy that. People can't connect to that unless, like they've seen you try it and you're like, this is how it works really well for this, blah, blah, blah. So I feel that that's maybe where a lot of new content creators go wrong, is that they sort of don't get that balance. Like you say, they don't experiment. They want to get it right straight away. And then they kind of stop doing it because it's not working.
yeah,
Because
absolutely. And at the end of the day, people want to connect with people. Like that's the essence of social media. Yes, the big brands have their page, but even now you see the trend of big brands giving their page a voice. There is a voice to the Nike page. There is a voice that's why brands are now embracing memes and actually commenting under people's stuff with a certain tone of vernacular, because they are personifying the brand. And so you already have an advantage, which is that you're actually a person. So allow people to connect with you as a person. And I do think there is a way to balance that though with boundaries. A lot of people don't want to share parts of themselves because they think content creation is you putting your whole life out there. It doesn't have to be. I am very proud of the fact that as a creator, I am still very strong about my privacy and about my boundaries, and you're perfectly within your right to do that. You are the creator. You are the one who is at the head of, or at the steering wheel of the ship. So steer it where you want it to go. If you don't want to share something, don't share it. They won't know till
Don't
you
share
share
it.
it.
It's too late once you shared, but like, yeah, maybe have a think. Maybe just
Yeah.
sort of archive it until you're ready, and then
Yeah. And
yeah,
then,
yeah,
you're still in control of this. Like, at the end of the day, as much as creation can be a hobby, it's still work. It's still a business. And with businesses, you have to make a plan. You got to make a strategy. You also got to think very intentionally about everything that you do. And it's not to say be hypercritical of yourself or overly aware. You can still have fun with that, but just remember that you are in control. And so exercise that agency.
Do you feel, and this is something that I feel, I think, is that Black women in particular, when they do start something, tend to do everything themselves, and
Absolutely.
you mentioned the burnout, and I think that's it. It's like it's hard for us to hire people that we trust to be able to carry the brand or business in that same way, and so we do end up having more burnout, as well as having black tax and a
Yeah.
lot more caring responsibilities within families. So I just wonder if that's something you've experienced through the community as well, or seen through the community.
Absolutely. I've seen it through my own life.
Mm.
Absolutely. There's this belief that we have to take on the burden of everything. And also I think that it's not just a mindset thing. I think for a lot of people it is an economic thing. It takes money to hire people. And a lot of us, like, we know Black women get a marginal amount of business investment and VC funding. And so where is the money to hire a whole team? And so, yeah, a lot of us are having to do everything because we don't have the resources to not, And so I think it is then learning about, yes, the mindset stuff, giving trust to other people and truly stepping into that executive leadership presence, which is I'm going to delegate or I'm going to bring out the potential in other people. But then there's also the how do we actually work towards that realistically and economically, and what can I actually manage? I do think that can work for a while, but you need to have a plan as to how long am I going to be everything and be doing everything in this company, and is that actually sustainable for me? If it's not, I need to think about, one, raising enough money to hire people, or two, changing my business model so it requires less in general. And I think a benefit to that is AI. Like the growth of AI now means that if you learn the right systems, go to the right websites, find the right software, maybe a lot of things can be taken off of your plates, and you can be a solo business completely. But you need to employ something, whether it's a software or whether it's an employee. You'll need to do something. And I do think there's also nothing wrong with asking for help. As Black women, we feel guilty about asking for help. And that's where community also comes in. Asking people, how are you doing this? Or can you help me with this? Or can we collaborate in this way? Versus trying to be the one at the forefront of everything.
Yeah. I think there's an isolation that I think people don't realize. So when I did my MBA on it, and I looked at Black women in financing in the UK years ago, a long time ago. But then as I did it, my finding was I thought it was going to be the banks are the issue. That was how I went in with this thing, like the banks are preventing us from getting money to grow our businesses, etc. But what I found was that men in general partnered up more. Even black men, they partnered up more. White men would just grab anyone with a skill and be like, "Hey, let's all do this together," except like innocent winks, etc., that kind of thing. White women tended to pair up, so you'd still have that. And then black women, because they'd probably been burnt somewhere in the past, somewhere along the line, it's not because they just had less trust towards partnering up, so they ended up being solopreneurs, but they would never earn like the six figures because they were solopreneurs. They were literally only, and this was, I mean, I was doing it 2004, the internet was new, so you didn't have e-commerce where people could just do, so it's very different now. So I still feel there's that thing of us being a little bit shy about working together.
There's so much to that. That's such a good point, because it's generational as well, right? It's okay, maybe you haven't been scarred, but maybe your mum was, and she's telling you, auntie, don't tell auntie your business, don't tell this person, hide this from that. There's a general suspicion which we can inherit generationally. And I think that that's what makes kind of me and Renee's relationship, and the fact that we are co-founders, we are best friends, we live together as well. Like, we are close. And with that, owning so much with one person, it kind of makes it so, I don't want to say revolutionary, but very different and very against the grain, because we are two Black women who are doing business and life together. And I think it requires you to overcome that overall suspicion, but also this desire to own everything, because it may be limiting your impact. And as you've highlighted, your income. There is power in twos. There is power in collaboration, and it's a multiplying power. It's not just about, oh, this person can help me with this person can actually 10x 10x my output. And I think if more of us grasp that principle, which is actually there's multiplication and collaboration, we would see far better results. But it does require us overcoming generational hurdles, mental hurdles, emotional hurdles, if you have been, pain before. So it's not easy, but it is very, very beneficial.
That's where I'm from.
Hey, come on. We love South Africa.
Where did you go?
We went to Johannesburg and Cape Town, but our live show was in Johannesburg.
Yeah, so South Africans, we don't really count Cape Town as being, it's like saying you're from London, but you're from Brighton. That's how we see it, because it's so kind of the same energy, same Brighton energy. So we're very much kind of like Joburg. I'm from Durban, but okay. I went back for university at 18, so I lived there for 6 years. And so I see myself as a Joburger.
Love that for you. It was a beautiful time. And what I took us to South Africa was another thing that we do in person is international retreats. So TMS has evolved so much out of just being a podcast. And we now get to travel the world with a lot of our podcast listeners. So we host annually a retreat for some of our podcast listeners, about 15 women who literally fly in from all over the world. So America, South America, Australia, like Africa, they all come to one country and we do a week together, bonding, exploring, adventuring, talking. And it's such a magical experience. The TMS international retreats are a real treat. Like, we've made so many friends. We've seen so many strangers from different corners of the world become best friends from, sleeping in the same room, doing sleepovers, having conversations on long bus rides. It's actually amazing to see. And then we also do community activations. So we recently were in New York to do a sip and paint. We have done step aerobics classes. We have walked the entire Victoria line here in London from Brixton to Walthamstow Central. Yeah, we it was all for charity.
Okay.
It was all for charity. Yeah, we raised money around different female initiatives around the world. We walked the Victoria line to support girls' education in Tanzania, which was where we were doing our international retreat that year. We raised about £3,500. And recently we also did a fundraiser to raise money for a school that we are building in Ghana called the Bright Future Academy. So yeah, if anyone wants to get behind that, please donate to the Bright Future Academy. We are providing education for some amazing nursery kids.
Oh, okay. You're both Ghanaian?
No, I am Ghanaian fully, and Renee is half Nigerian and half Congolese.
I was going to say, okay, all right then. So that's why you said West African. So yeah. We are...
Well, we've taken over that entire region.
Well, you've got the French as well, so you got...
I'm telling you, we're so representative of the continent, and it's why we love it, to be fair. Like, it's our motherland. And why we always... It's funny because also being from the beauty space, we see a lot how wisdom from African proverbs and resources from Africa, like around the continent, are used to excel in the West, but they're often... Africa's left out of the equation. They're left out of the profits, as we've seen historically. And so for us, a big part of TMS is also pouring back into Africa and the various countries within Africa. We have been to Asia. We did a travel experience to Bali. And I love traveling. Yeah, it was a good time. I love traveling around. But for us, because we do have this power of community and the sheer like hundreds of thousands of women listen to our podcast. So it's like if we've got the ear of all of these women, mainly in America, but also mainly in Africa, let's share the resources around the community, you know, and use our power to pour into Africa, whether it's through tourism, whether it's through charity and philanthropy, whether it's passing the mic. Let's just do it. You know, I think even with content, Africa is often so generalized and left out of the equation, you know, like people aren't going to do a tour. People don't do tours and include African countries. And it's like, we want to see more of that because they, like, going back to the conversation you said about Black women, a large heap of the TMS listeners are in the continent. And we love that. So we're going to serve that. We're not going to act like they're not there.
Yeah. I just did 4 countries in Africa in January. So I just decided with my now ex that we would do 4 countries. So we did Mozambique, obviously South Africa. We were based in South Africa. And then we did Mozambique, Kenya, and the Seychelles, which I would never, you know, I wouldn't do normally. It's like, it's just islands, etc. But, you know, he'd never been to a lot of the Africa. So I was like, I want to move back eventually at some point, and it's good to explore where you can. But what came to mind with you know, doing it was that there's an opportunity to exploit Africa, which I don't like. So a lot of people who go onto the continent from here or from the States, they are looking at ways to exploit rather than be collaborative and be part of the community within Africa. So if I was to go back, I wouldn't want to go back and be like, okay, then I'm just taking advantage of, you know, my Western whatever. I want to go back and, you know, give to the community, so become part of the local community. And that's quite hard to do because you're perceived as an expat. You're not in the country that you're from. So there's a conversation that needs to be had around how to do that respectfully in a way that doesn't, do you know what I mean? Just be like what every other nation has done and come in. And also, the friendliness. So it varies from country to country. And so some countries are more open. So Kenya is quite open. Seychelles, no, they don't care. They're literally just tourism and they're not interested in anything else. Mozambique is too impoverished, you know, and South Africa is a mixed bag. So it varies. So I think it would be interesting to see as you travel around that space, etc., you know, the experiences that you have in places outside of West Africa. But I could see you guys being in the States, actually. I could see it being based in the States.
Interesting. You might be interesting.
I think so.
Oh, yeah, America is our highest.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also because I think the diasporan community in America, so when we say Black Americans, people just assume it's, you know, historically enslaved Americans, but actually the sort of Nigerians over there, Ghanaians, etc., Somalians, Ethiopians, massive communities that are just, you know, don't have that Somali American label, for example, but they are very, very active, especially online. So I could definitely see that.
Facts, yeah. We're gonna lean into that a lot more actually, because I just think it helps us have very enriched conversations. But yeah, we'll see. TMS is truly global, so we'll see where it takes us.
So that is definitely your kind of focus for now. Like you say, you'll get back into the hair and beauty.
There's so much to do here for sure. Like like I said, I'm a multi-hyphenate. I would love to juggle so much. I also think there's so much power in focus. And right now, TMS is growing and it is so beautiful, the opportunities we're getting and the people we're getting to meet to be able to bring about change and impact. I wouldn't want to miss out this window of opportunity to really drive change for women and hopefully use that as leverage for the next step, right? So yeah, I'm very much committed to the TMS vision right now and making sure that we really spread this message of sisterhood and the power of community. I think there is still so much. I mean, look at like the UN SDGs and all these sustainable development goals and how we're trying to close that gender equity gap and how much advancement women still need to make or needs to be made for women to have equality and true fairness. There's still so much to do. And I hope that even when I do, you know, re-enter my business entrepreneurship situation, it's still aiding that cause, because I really think that's my mission. And I don't think it will ever change. I have it's funny, I was talking about this earlier today on a podcast recording, but I have a very, very deep pain around women, especially women who have been affected by gender-based violence. And I think for me, if I spend the rest of my life dealing with that one issue and making sure that women feel supported and educated and at least equipped to be able to flee a situation or not even get into, find themselves in that situation, then I will be happy. I'll be happy that my life's purpose has been achieved. So I want everything to serve that one purpose, which is making sure women are empowered and encouraged to live the life they actually want.
Yeah, I'm actually on the board of trustees for Women's Aid, so that's a lot of what I do.
Wow.
Is domestic abuse and gender-based sexual
Wow.
violence, basically here in the
It's,
UK.
yeah, I
And
love that. We went to a women's aid event. And the celebration of I was going to call her Dirty Diana. That is not her name.
Princess Diana?
No. It's the
Diana
Western
Abbott?
Theatre. No, the Western Theatre show.
Oh.
She recently passed away. What? It's not Diana Ross. Why am I forgetting her name? Tina Turner. Why did I want to do Diana? No, Tina Turner. We went to the celebration of the Tina Turner Broadway production.
Yes.
And it was so good. And it was, I remember distinctly leaving the theater and turning to Renee. I was like, oh my gosh, this has reconnected me to my mission, because I've constantly wondered, God, why do you keep taking me to women? And what is my calling here? I've always been dealing with women, and the women who come to me always have issues, and they're issues that relate to my issues. What's going on? And that evening and what Women's Aid put together made me remember that story of women finding freedom and women feeling supported and women feeling heard. That's my calling. So yeah, I left literally I've been reconnected to my mission, and she was like, yep, you've got it. Because I mean, transparently, I grew up seeing a lot of domestic violence at home. And I now sit as an advisor on a charity dealing with domestic violence, especially for younger girls.
Is it I'd love to work.
No. It's Swim, Strength Within Me. And I would love to work with Women's Aid on just more stuff, especially around relationship education. But my thing was, a lot of it got swept under the rug, even though it wasn't just my immediate family. It was also aunties, and then you'll hear of this auntie, and then you'll hear of that person, and it's why is no one talking about the fact that this is wrong? Beyond just we're so sorry this happened to you, but structurally, what's allowing this to continue and perpetuate? And then you're hearing somebody's daughter is going through the same thing, and it's we don't want to address the elephant in the room. And I think that's what made me start my YouTube channel, but also commit to having transparent conversations, whether it be in a speaking engagement or on a podcast or through a YouTube video, actually addressing the elephant in the room. Because when you don't do it, cycles like that are allowed to continue, because people think it's so niche to them. People think it's new to them, when it's not. It's an age-old generational pattern. And a lot of women, especially Black women's freedom, is locked and held back by the fact that people don't want to have a transparent conversation because of taboo. It's a taboo, and there's still so many things that we consider taboo to talk about. But it's we all know that person's husband is cheating on them. We all know that person is going through XYZ or being abused in this way, and no one's saying anything because it's just, we don't talk about that. Don't air out your dirty laundry. And these cultural norms, which are put in us subconsciously from when we are children, are really keeping us bound, especially women. And so, yeah, sorry to have gone on a tangent about that. Yeah,
I totally agree. I mean, part of the reason I left South Africa was because gender-based violence was not being addressed. And, it was get over it. It happened. You're alive. Be thankful. That was the conversation. And, rapists were being supported by other women in the courtroom who were saying, oh no, but he's a really nice guy. And it was just a really strange space, but a new democracy. So I understood why those conversations had never been able to be had.
Yeah.
And then when I got back here, I thought, well, you know, the UK is so far ahead in terms of these conversations. But it turns out they're not as far ahead as you think, especially in our community, because people are like, yes, suck it up. And they don't think, oh, this person went through a trauma 20 years ago. This trauma may still be affecting them now and make, you know, their decisions and their actions. People are just like, well, why aren't you over it? Move on. You know, there's still that thing of just like, move on, da 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 da. And, you know, therapy is not very culturally or trauma informed. A lot of the time it's very much kind of, again, like just victim support, and then that's about it, etc. So yeah, I mean, if you can work in those fields and sort of support that, like you say, part of the mission, that'd be really brilliant, because they need more voices that are intersectional. At the moment it's very much still the same voices that we had sort of in the 80s, aside from things like honor-based killing. It's still the same voices. So
it's crazy. It is very crazy to me.
No, but I'm glad there's a purpose, and I think that's really important, because people think income and they don't think purpose.
This is it. They don't think impact.
Yeah, they just think income.
Impact. And that's why you have to be community focused, because a lot of people, like you were even mentioning about Africa as a continent, go in with, what can I extract? What can I exploit? What is in it for me? But when you put community at the center of your business, your first question is, how do I serve? Right? Not how do I profit, but how do I actually serve? And I think that's the difference we want to see in business, community-centered commerce. Like, what does it mean to put humans at the center of this and not exploiting insecurity? Because women see that a lot, especially in the beauty space. Your insecurities are implanted so that they can be profited off of. But what does it mean to put somebody's well-being at the forefront, and actually see somebody's success, whether it's a community, succeed? And I think that's one of the sad sides of capitalism, which is the exploitative nature of it. But what happens if we are radically revolutionizing that by putting people at the center of things and not just profit?
Yeah, I mean, God forbid that the people were at the center of anything. I think it will be interesting with an election coming up. You know, so at the moment they're trying to say, you know, I think the most interesting thing that they said was around May being the warmest May in the history on record ever. And I was like, are they saying that because it's an election year? They need to cheer us up and make out like it's the Conservatives that have somehow changed the weather, because I felt really cold in May. So I don't believe.
It's June and I'm still cold.
I'm cold. So I feel like, you know, this thing of community and people first, it's really difficult. And I think I've created a community. We're like 5,000 members. It's, you know, over a long period of time. The engagement varies, but it's interesting because people keep saying, do this, do that, go and serve this part of the community, which is maybe the top 5%. And I'm just thinking, well, that's all well and good. Then maybe they're the 5% who have the income to do certain things, but they're not the community. They're like a small niche within the community. The wider community have more modest means, and therefore you want to be able to serve everybody, not just the people that can afford it. Do you see what I mean? But it's very, very difficult, I think, with communities. I'm glad that you guys have found a community that's global and works well. And I think it's because you've got that joint mission and purpose. So people are saying, we want the, you know, equity, we want equality, you know, for women in these spaces. I think the gender gap is 14.3% in the UK. It's still the pay gap, the gender pay gap. So it's still fairly big. If you look at full time, I think it's like 6% or something. So it's, you know, so we've still got quite a long way to go. And then if you were to look at it with race, it would be
exactly. And then when you think of that on a global scale, because that's just the UK, where, like you said, it needs to be so advanced. And then you go to other places, and it's there's a lot of work to be done. That's the conclusion I always come to. There's a lot of work to be done.
But no, I think, and also the travel, I think that's a really amazing part of the community, because that's something that I think I'm in a Black women's travel group, but you know, a lot of them are like, oh, can I go by myself? I feel really, you know, there's that
am I going to be safe?
So it's good that there's something that brings people together. I mean, you've done South Africa already now, so I can't say go back, but
keep your eyes peeled, we might be back.
Try Durban, because it's Indian Ocean.
I've heard good things.
It's Indian Ocean, so it's warmer water. So you can go at different times of the year. The air is not cold. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that.
So
I
yeah,
haven't.
I can't do Cape Town. It's too cold for me.
It was freezing. It was
When did you go? When did you go? What time of year?
February.
Should have been cold.
It, Johannesburg was lovely. Cape Town, there was a gust of wind,
Yeah, because I was there end of January. I flew back on the 1st of Feb, so I'm
and it
just
was
like,
cold.
it was cold. But yeah, I hear you. Sometimes yeah. But it's Four Seasons Cape Town.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But no, it was such a beautiful time, and I can't wait to go back. I think there's just so much potential in the sisterhood, and I love that it's the sisterhood really coming together to grow it and burst it. It's evolving.
Hmm. Well, I think it will be interesting for our audience to sort of think about. It's a bit chicken and egg for some of them. It's like, do they do the
Mm.
content first and then the business, or do they do the business and then the content? And you've
That's-
done growth. Yeah, I know but you've done sort of both really, because you had a
Yeah,
business, etc.
yeah.
And then you've got yeah, and then
And
there's a
I
business
will
too.
say though, it has been easier from a business perspective. It's been easier to build the community before birthing the business or the
Oh
product.
right.
And I think you have to see, because you basically create a community of people who can already give you feedback and tell you what they need. So now you're actually creating things which serve the community versus creating things and then implanting the need. There's already a need. You need to connect with the people who are in need of it, whether they know it or not, hear their issues, and then create a product solution for a problem that exists rather than creating the problem or manufacturing a problem, which isn't really a problem because you've made this a product and you don't know how to sell it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's very, very true. So a lot of apps that are on the market, you're thinking, well, why did you create that? Because nobody kind of wants that. It's a good idea. It's a
Yeah.
good idea, but nobody's asked you for it, and so it's kind of like you're trying to shoehorn an idea into people's, and it doesn't into people's psyche, and it doesn't really work like that. So you're right. It's like you create the community first, which is what Emma, is trying to do. Our community
Yeah.
manager is to build the community first and then be like, well, what does the
Create
community
a product
need?
solution.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Because we see that again, beauty space, right? A company would be like, it'll be really cheap and like the profit margins for us to create this product would be amazing. So let's create the product and then implant into women's head that they have a problem so that we can sell them this product. But there isn't a problem. There actually is, like, for example, this is gonna sound so bad. There are brands that sell water mists in a can for makeup, but that's not a setting spray. So why do you need water in a can for makeup specifically? But again, it's like we need to broaden who thinks they can use it. So let's not just market it to athletes who may need to actually cool down, but let's market it to people who wear makeup as a hydration solution. But it's not a hydration solution, it's just water on top of oily products. So how's it going to even get through to this? Do you see a manufactured
Yeah.
problem? And now people
Yeah.
are thinking, oh, I need to buy this product because I want dewy skin, but that's not going to give you dewy skin. It's just going to make your face wet for 2 seconds. So it's like, if we really think about it, a lot of products are being created first, then the solution is, or a lot of products and solutions are being manufactured first, and then the problems being manufactured instead of actually just being an organic response to an organic problem.
Yeah. So I struggled. So I've been sort of natural hair for over 20 years. So before the sort of, it became a real trend, and I struggled because I was told now that you've got natural hair, you've got to do like 15 different processes. You need all these, and I just thought this is actually becoming more unnatural than if I just washed my hair and kind of, it became an industry in and of itself. And I was like, Kopu, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, that's brilliant. But then
Not
these products,
the
yeah, it's just a lot going on. It's like it's half a day just to
Yep.
sort of do, and I
and a
just
million
didn't.
products.
Yeah, I couldn't buy into it,
Yeah.
so I literally didn't. But I just found it really interesting that they'd sort of created
Yeah.
a whole industry,
Yeah.
and half of it I questioned: did people really need it?
No. But we're
No.
told we need it. It's
Yeah.
this one does this one does that. And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, like I love hair technology. I love
Yes.
to taking care of ourselves, but sometimes you have to admit that it's excessive because
Yeah.
men are out here with 5-in-1 soap. It's a body wash, it's a face wash, it's a shampoo, it's a conditioner, it's a shaving cream. If you want
Yes.
to use it as deodorant, you can too.
And yeah, we're here and it's like, no, leave it in for an hour and 2 minutes,
Yeah.
not an hour and three, an hour
Feminine
and
wash,
two.
hygiene wash, feminine foam, body scrub.
Yes,
Then you got a
it's too
body wash.
much.
Oh, it's
Just too much. But
again
it's life. It's life.
exploitation, the capitalism, and the fact that women fall victim to it mostly.
And you know what? If it was women that look like us who were doing it, I would be a lot more considerate about it. But a lot of the time, I'm just like, how do you know what's best for
Look.
I'd like to see more hairdressers, more black hairdressers with more advice
Yeah.
around the hair. So what I found, my experience has always been like, they're like, oh, who did your hair last? Oh, this is awful, blah, blah, blah. And then they do it, overuse the heat because that's to try and get it straight, even though you said, I don't really want it straight, but they'll make it straight.
Yeah.
And then, you never see them again anyway.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see them being a little bit more
Hair education.
trained on like health and, like healthy hair, etc. And saying to people, so like I said, I've got alopecia, for them to say, actually, you need to use products which have this and not this because it's not going to, it's not going to help you. Blah, blah. And they don't seem to have that. I don't know, in hairdressing, I'm not sure if it's or...
I think it's a lot of reasons. When we look at it historically, a lot of black beauty is more informal, less scientific, and more informal, which is that it has come from a lot of cultural traditions and practices. Like shea butter is not something that someone went into the lab and tested and was like, oh, it has the perfect compounding properties to meet hair growth or hair, moisturize. It's just something that our ancestors have discovered worked through trial and error. And so I think there is that like less scientific, but more so experiential approach to hair that we have. But also when we think about here in the West, a lot of black women, a lot of even women in general are erased from scientific trials. So a lot of the solutions, like you even mentioned, around things like alopecia, around things like skin needs and eczema, and even when we look at the medical field, is on white skin, white hair, which has very different properties to black skin and black hair. And so we were erased from science in a side of the world which really values it. You don't get products which actually serve your needs really well, but it also means that it's not embedded into the education system. So a lot of people who go to be trained at college or, wherever to learn that hair science are not learning about black hair. My auntie has been a hairdresser for over 20 years, and she decided to go and get her actual qualification. She did I think there was 1 week they did on Afro hair. The rest of it was just on the dummies with the silky hair. And, it was white women who would come into the college salon, and it's like you're learning to do white hair. So even education wise, there's a lack on the stylist part. I also think because we have... because black hair is less formal and also that investment is not put into it, a lot of us do, as you described, jump from hairstylist to hairstylist to hairstylist because this one doesn't do braids, this one doesn't do weaves, this one doesn't do relaxers, this one doesn't. And so because of that, we're not also sticking around long enough to be with hairstylists who can actually learn our hair and
do the journey. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Well, no, that's been really interesting. We've jumped around, I think. So we haven't
Someone somewhere has found it all interesting, but you have to. It's quite niche. We started at Black Panther. We've ended up talking about salons. So,
but I think that's part of the beauty of the whole thing. Is like, if you're a creator of anything, whether it be business or content, etc. I think, but you can't be too niche. You really do need to sort of be able to think outside of just one thing. And so I think in a way that's useful for people, and hopefully they'll take that away. That sort of like, they can't be. I think that's where a lot of income creators, for me, get a little bit stuck. They only talk about finance. They only talk about, I don't know, health. And they don't think about the sort of holistic. Yeah, and so it's really difficult for people to really engage with it. But, so where can people find you, Courtney?
Oh, well, if you search my name, Courtney Daniella Boateng, you'll find me everywhere. You can follow me on Instagram at CD Boateng. You can follow the To My Sisters podcast at To My Sisterhood. You can also find me on YouTube, Courtney Daniella Boateng, and you can find To My Sisters on YouTube and all podcast streaming platforms as well. Just search To My Sisters.
YouTube as a journey, did you find that sort of as expected, or was it different?
It's
The
been different.
journey,
It's been very different. Like,
how did it go?
I think YouTube is the hardest platform, but it's the best. Like
Oh,
it, yeah. When it comes to building community, when it comes to even monetization, when it comes to establishing legitimacy, YouTube is the best platform, hands down. If you're a YouTuber, I really think, and it could just be the elitism in me, I think you're like a creator. Do you know what I mean? If you can crack YouTube. And so I think it's definitely worth the investment, but it is a lot of work. Like it is staying consistent, coming up with great ideas that last the test of time. It's really, really challenging, but it's very beneficial. It helps you reach new audiences. No one does discoverability like YouTube does.
it's the search
Um,
engine, yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, I've loved it. It's been tough to be consistent, but I think YouTube also does a really good job at supporting creators. I recently went on a retreat with YouTube, Women of YouTube and Blossom Bloom. 2 days away, just talking about creator well-being. There's loads of YouTube Black events. Look, like just so much YouTube does to pour into creators. They could do a little bit more, but that's me being biased. But yeah, I think
They've started. They've
yeah,
started.
it's fine, they're getting there. But even like historically, they have really poured a lot into their creators. I was a part of the YouTube Black Voices Fund, the first one they ever did in 2021, which came with, a grant, actual money, but also like support with YouTube partner managers and them kind of teaching you about changes on the platform. And I really think YouTube's been, not be giving a whole ad for YouTube, but YouTube's done well in, evolving with the time with like YouTube Shorts, and there's just so much functionality. There's the community tab, you've got lives, you've got podcast feature, you've got shorts, you've got your own channel. There's so much. There's paid subscriptions that you can put behind a paywall. There's just so much you can do.
Is there any platform that you don't think is particularly a good one for somebody who's starting out? I think, just in terms of, for me, Twitter has really changed.
Oh no, that is in the bin. I
Yeah.
wasn't even think when you said that. I was like, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter didn't even come to my mind. LinkedIn's great. TikTok did not come. Not TikTok. X did not come to my mind because it's changed. Like you said, it's changed so much that building a community, I don't know. I feel the same way about Threads too. I think Threads is too new. I think X is dying. But hey, I might be completely wrong. I'm not a predictor of these things, but I would definitely say, if anything, lean into video. Lean into video, lean into like really connecting with people casually over casual video content.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think, where it used to be Twitter and you'd follow people because you wanted to hear what they had to say, now I barely recognized X or Twitter at all, and I just follow it for stuff that I'm interested in. So, like you're into Marvel, I'm really into Korean dramas.
Okay.
Like no big time Asian dramas, not just Korean. So I shouldn't just say Korean because that's not fair. But like Thai, Japanese,
Love
etc.
that.
And I sort of read like mangas and manhwas, and I'm really like into that thing. So that's the only space that allows me to sort of like connect
Yeah.
with, oh, there's a new show coming out, etc. So that's how I hear about it.
Yeah.
But am I connecting with people and having conversations? No. But five years ago, we were having conversations. We're getting to know people. I've
Yeah.
dated off Facebook and Twitter because you are having, so you're getting to know people so well that you actually.
That you can.
But now it's like you say, it's very, very difficult to do. So, so I think you're right. YouTube and then probably Insta.
I would say Instagram's a good one. TikTok's a great one. Mainly for building like, I wouldn't even just say a community per se, but really finding your niche as well. Like TikTok is really rising up again as a search engine. Like there's so many articles out there by rivaling Google. So I would definitely say lean into that if you can. I'm about to venture into that world and see what comes out of it. But yeah, anywhere that just allows you to connect with people and allows people to connect with your content easily, run with it.
How have you found it being an author? Because that's obviously quite different. It's a different type of content. And how, I mean, I know you say it's more your business partners area in terms of writing, etc. But the book is both your books.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
I've loved it. So, like I said, my background has mainly been like audiovisual, like creating a podcast and YouTube videos. Like that's been me. But I found that writing allowed me to express my creativity in a different way, especially leaning more into the storytelling, leaning more into like, as I hope this podcast is even shown, like I love diving deep into things, and I think books also allow you to do that, to really explore it from different angles. And my background is political and social sciences, so looking at it from that
Mine
angle,
too.
we need to go out. We need to go out. We need to go out.
English literature and international relations. That's what I
Love
studied.
it. Yeah. So it's like you really want to get
You want to know.
Sometimes you can't in an Instagram reel or a YouTube video. And so books allow you to do that. And I genuinely loved the process, and I was able to find my writing voice, which is slightly different from my speaking voice. So I really loved the entire process. And I think writing a book brings a level of credibility which other forms of content creation don't. I think when I think about my journey, it's really been about, how do I say this? This is going to sound so arrogant, but run with me. I think I am very much like a public figure. Like when you say my name, people know what I do and what I'm about. And, not everybody in the world, if that was the case, we'll be in a very different conversation here. But, some people know me. But I think that credibility of me as a person has come from me doing things like writing a book and being very consistent with my message and me online. But I do think that sometimes when you don't lean into more traditional, and you can say this about press as well, when you don't lean into traditional forms of media like newspaper and stuff like that, you can easily just be a creator that's here today and gone tomorrow. And that can happen to anybody. But I do think when you have certain articles written about you, when you have a book and you have a bio that comes up on Google, that establishes a level of credibility that sometimes having a TikTok with even 2 million followers doesn't do. And so I think if you're trying to transcend from a certain level of influence to now a higher level of impact, you do want to do something that establishes that credibility, like publish a book.
And I think that's it. It's social media as influence and moving towards, an entrepreneur with impact. That's the journey, and very, very few people are able to do that and move to that.
Facts.
Yeah.
And
so
even having the ability to work with organizations, right? Like Women's Aid or something which just allows you to get connected to something that really amplifies and really solidifies you. And I think even to My Sisters has opened those kind of doors, but in collaborating with people like ActionAid or Spotify or whatever, you then get seen as a subject matter expert. And you have to press for that level of credibility when you're trying to have impact, right? You can influence individual people's lives, which is really important and in itself impactful. But if you're trying to have a greater scale of impact, you need to get connected to sometimes these more traditional, established outlets.